So I've got to the stage now where I've got a good earth connection between the shielding and the outer case of the connector, but I've noticed a slight issue. At some point I'm going to have to connect these wires to these pins, and obviously as you can see at the minute, the wires stick slightly forward of the connector, and there's probably just about enough space to solder that on there, but that's not how the connector is. The connector will be inserted into the case of the connector, that much, so there's no way that if I trim these, and obviously I can't, there's a bit of spare space in there, but there's not a huge amount of space in there, so I can't have cables just spiraling around inside. These wires are going to have to be cut to be about the right length to connect to those pins. Now, I think the way this is supposed to work is this is pushed forward, and then the cables are cut to the correct length, soldered on, and then the whole thing is drawn back in and screwed shut all in one go. So that's going to have to rotate in there while this is screwed in. That could damage the. So that rotating, as you can see, is wrecking this a little bit, and in fact, all in all, that's not looking terribly promising. I think if I leave the tape on here holding these in place, I'll probably get away with that though. But I'm going to have to now find out the correct length to cut these cables to, so that when it's all pushed back in, and it's not much, it's going to be from the end of this forward, because that should be pushed like that. So you want the outer sheath to be about level with the grommet, and then you cut off. It's probably going to be 12mm, 15mm, that sort of length, so that when it's drawn back in, you've got the correct connection to the pins. Right, so hopefully you'll be able to get a good view of this. As with all my videos, it seems to be really up close, tricky work. So I've swapped it out for a 5-pin rather than a 4-pin connector, because I want to do a test wire up of one of the steppers rather than the VFD or anything. So the grommet stops about there, and this screws in about that far. So if I line those up, see if I can't find my marker pen. So that looks like I'm going to need very, very little in the way of cable. Something around about there would be more than enough. So that looks like I'm going to need, well, a spot on guess, 15mm. I think actually 15mm might be a little bit generous, so I'll try lining that up with that. So that's with the screw in all the way, and the bottom of the pin will fall about there, and the bottom of the grommet, that goes in I don't know if you can see those two orange marks, but the distance between those is 13 millimeters. So yeah, somewhere between 12 and 14 millimeters is what I need. So I'll just measure that on here. Let's go for 13 millimeters on this test piece. Wow, that feels very, very short. And just undo the outer cover, or the inner cover even. Just nip that off. Right, so I place that in there. As you can see, the cables actually finish inside the connector body, so there's no way other than to push through the grommet as well as the cable. That's going to make things tricky. Just find my wire strippers. Now these pins have a slightly recessed, so we're talking maybe 4 millimeters of sheath needs coming off. 3 or 4 millimeters, about that sort of mark. That's a bit generous at nearly 5. I'll probably tin these as well, I think, before I try and connect them. Yeah, because this is a 5-core cable, it's got an inner core to keep it stable. We'll just nip that out, we don't need that. And there we go. If we just try these on there. Yeah, so it sits in the pin nicely. A little bit on the long side. I'm going to have to nip them off shorter in the future, but for now that'll be okay. It should be quite nice and easy to solder into there. I'll just get the soldering iron warmed up. Right, the soldering iron is now all warmed up, and what I've done is decided on a wiring pattern. The drive provides A plus, A minus, B plus, B minus control or outputs for the steppers, and obviously I need a consistent wiring pattern through from the drive into the plug, from into the socket, into the plug, and onto the stepper itself. So I came up with this designation. So pin 1 will be brown, pin 2 blue, 3 grey, 4 black, 5 green yellow. There you go. And I'll wire all of the connectors up in exactly the same way, so they should be interchangeable. I've grabbed the part of the connector with pins in my third hand here, and now I'm going to have a crack at soldering in the cables. Pin 5 is at the bottom, but there's numbers. They're really tiny, so you won't be able to see them on camera. There's numbers stamped in the plastic. Well, I've totally butchered that onto there now. I thought I would spare you the pain of watching me trying to solder them on. I have learned something new. I need to give it more than the 13 or so millimeters I gave it. Something more like 20 mil, or maybe not quite that much, 18, probably better. Basically, the wires don't run exactly straight into the pins, so as you can see, they do twist and fold over each other slightly, so you need a little bit more length in the cable. These, although they are soldered firmly onto the pins, it was a close run thing for the last one I did, which was the blue one here. It only just made it into the pin. Right, but now I've butchered that, I will attempt to connect the rest of put the rest of the connector back together. So obviously you'd need to put this on, this bit on first in a real cable, because you don't want to be sliding that down a metre or two of cable. As I have the luxury of being able to put it on after, I'll do it that way now. I think I'm just going to tin these together very quickly. Won't take 2 seconds, and it should mean that the shield cables are easier to work with. As I've got my soldering iron hot already. Right, that's them tinned. Oh yeah, they're going to be much easier to work with now. So that's another note to self there. Now I think because I've cut these so short, I think I'm going to have the grommet not quite stop at the same point as the outer sheath. Not the end of the world, but a bit of a pity. Damn, this is going to be tricky now, because I've got to guess the length. Oh wow, they are going to actually finish at about the same point. Right. Okay, let's see if that works. Yeah, unfortunately the case gets caught up on the tape, but the tape's necessary. Once it's over the start, it seems to go okay. Of course it isn't this time. Right, that's all home. It's tied in nice and tight. Right, the acid test, of course, is do I have continuity between the outer case and the sheath? Which is yes, but importantly, do I have continuity between any of the pins in the outer case? The answer is no, so it looks like that was touching the case deliberately. Excellent, so that plan seems to have worked, and now I can take off the sellotape, the tape, lock the connector closed with the world's smallest grub screw. And then swear because I've forgotten to put the locking ring on. So I'm going to have to undo this. A little bit of tape on here. Oh no! Schoolboy error. Not only am I going to have to undo it, this has got to go on before this, so I've got to completely take it off. Oh well, it gives you a good idea of whether or not it's worked, and whether or not it's repeatable. I didn't plan on giving it 2 goes. Just see how badly damaged this is. There's a couple of scuff marks on it, but it's actually it's looking pretty much good as new. Right, so put this bit on first. I won't forget that a second time, I'm sure. Now, I wonder if a little bit, because it seems to be grabbing and rubbing here, so I wonder if just a tiny bit of soap or something will help that along. Don't have any soap. It's a workshop, but I do have a bit of 3-in-1, so I don't think 3-in-1 should eat this. Oh, rotates much more easily. Slow that down. As much as I can, nothing. And then sit this on. Yeah, you can actually see when you're home, I think, because you can see the very top of the screw thread to this portion. You can see it just in there. Alright, so before I lose it, I'll stick this tiny little grub screw in. Right, now I've messed about with it, I need to do the continuity check again. So, sheath to connector is good. Sheath to pins is good. So I can take the tape off again. Now, I think it's probably, just looking at these, I think it's probably worth just giving these a little pull back just to make sure they're nice and tightly up. Yeah, there was a little bit of movement on that one. That's got them well out of the way. There's no danger of those shorting anything out now. God knows what they were thinking of when they put these screws in. Enough thread on them to get all the way back to China. There we go, one connector. I suppose on the real ones, this is going to be just a test connector, and I'll wire a stepper onto here, and then I can just plug it in as I do each socket on the case. I'll just plug this one in and just test that individual stepper. Yeah, there we go. Next stage is wire the stepper on. So that'll just quick solder the various stepper wires onto here, and we're good to go. So I've got the connector put together, and then it was time to wire the stepper on, and I decided to go for that as my wiring diagram. That matches up with the schematic that I've put together. There's 8 wires for the stepper running to 4 in the connector, and I saved you the embarrassment of my soldering. Here we go, all encased in electrical tape. Trust me, it is not pretty in there, but it does work. And there's the stepper. Now, one last thing you can check is to see if you've got continuity on any of the pins internally, because you've got in there is pin 5, which is earth, and you should find that there's no continuity with anything on pin 5, so none of the 4 pins internally. Oops, I touched the okay, and you should find that you have, because you've got 2 coils in the stepper, well 4 coils actually, but they're wired in parallel, so you should find you have continuity between pins 3 and 4 and between pins 1 and 2, and no continuity between anything on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and vice versa. And if you just quickly probe 3 and 4, there's continuity, and 1 and 2 there's continuity, and if you check between, in this case, between 2 and 3 and 4 I've got nothing, and between 1 and 3 and 4 I've got nothing, and the reverse, nothing. And just double check earth again, and you shouldn't have any continuity between the sheath and the earth. They're separate. The earth on the pin is for whatever device is connected on the end. The earth on the casing is for the sheath. So there we go. That's one connector set up and ready to go for testing.